Welcome to another edition of Dolphins in Depth, podcast brought to you by the Miami Herald. And today, it's probably going to look like the All Dolphins podcast. And there's a good reason for that, because I will have my All Dolphins colleague, former All Dolphins colleague, Alan Papard, on to have an important and very interesting discussion, something that really got me motivated and inspired, because the most common question that I'm ever asked, Alan, is will this Dolphins team be better than last year's Dolphins team? And did they build a better roster? And usually, you know what my answer is? I don't know. And I say I don't know because most of the time, injuries in my mind, not just yours, but the opponents, dictates what happens throughout the course of the season. Give you a perfect example. And people like you would like to discredit the Adam Gase 2016 run because...
Oh, well, when did I ever say that? When did I ever discredit the run? I said it was fluky. I said it was fluky. Are you going to argue that?
And then you said, oh, they didn't play any quarterbacks. They didn't face any quarterbacks during that season because everybody got injured.
Yeah, I mean, mistaken for somebody else who was a guest on your show, my man.
Oh, okay. So you're giving them full credit for 2016?
Yeah, it was fluky, and the schedule was not the toughest schedule they could have had. And what they did is they made plays down the stretch in practically every game, whether it was a Kenyon Drake kickoff return for a touchdown against the Jets, Kiko Alonso's pick six against the Chargers, against Phillip Rivers, who is a good quarterback, whether it was...
I remember Tony Lippett saved the game once with an interception.
That may have been the Chargers game. They had 4 picks in the fourth quarter. But that's all they did that season. And then again against the Bills, when Tyrod Taylor lit them up throughout regulation and they won in overtime with another 200-yard rushing performance by Jay. No, I did not poo-poo the 2016 team. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Resume.
Okay. But the issue is I often think that injuries sort of dictate where a team is throughout the course of the year, and not just your injuries, but an opponent's injuries. If Josh Allen, for instance, goes down with the Buffalo Bills and they have to rely on their backup, or vice versa, where, the years that Matt Moore had to serve as a starter and actually led the team to more wins than Ryan Tannehill. But that's a totally different subject. Today, I wanted to look at a piece that I did, really taking an analytical look at the Dolphins roster and where they were in terms of coming out of the offseason. I think we can both agree that most of the moves that are going to be made have been made, unless there's some last-minute trade like Adam Shaheen, who's going to be added to the roster days before the start of training camp, or they're going to go sign somebody who's going to rescue the season, which I think could be Calais Campbell. Let's look at each. The way I took it was I wanted to look at who left, kind of the reasoning why they left, and who replaced them, and factoring in age, factoring in contract, and sort of justifying whether this was an upgrade or downgrade. Now, there's some that I would say I sort of called a youth movement, and both you and I understand what a youth movement is. We're just getting rid of the old guy, replacing him with a younger, cheaper player with more upside.
Yep.
But now, not every one of those situations was a youth movement. And the way that I look at this, there were 8 upgrades and 5 downgrades. I'm not going to tell you what I think it is, Alan Papard, but I want you to summarize how you viewed the move. Let's take the first move. And let's start with the $28 million man, which is Christian Wilkins.
Can I interject real quickly something here that you to address something that you said, because you basically are saying it's all about, or a lot of it is about injuries. When we also evaluate a roster, how it looked before to how it looked now, we also have to factor in the level of performance of the returning players, and whether the expectation is that it's going to go up or it's going to go down, because invariably some guys will have a career year that they'll never match again. For example, as much as I love Raheem Mostert and you love him too, is it really fair to expect 1,000 yards and 21 touchdowns?
How dare you?
Is it fair to expect that again?
I think it's fair to expect the productivity from the running back unit to be the same. I think that their roles might shift with Devon Achane taking probably the lead role and Raheem Mostert taking the secondary role. However, we also have to factor in player development.
Yes.
Guys getting better, like Tua Tagovailoa, who has improved every single year of his career.
Wrong. And again, thank you for spreading the false narrative again, and that drives me nuts. And we're gonna get we're gonna, as you mentioned before, we're gonna fight immediately. This notion, and it's out there in the national media, that Tua's career has done nothing but go up. That's not correct. In a lot of the metrics last year, he actually had a worse season and significantly than in 2022. And that includes a lot of the clutch metrics. It includes fourth quarter passing. Why?
All right. You're being very selective about these stats. Clutch metrics, fourth quarter passing. Like, okay.
It's a little bit, but it's a little bit more analytical than to say, well, he had more passing yards, therefore he improved. Well, his passer rating, if you want to use that one, which I know you love. And by the way, can I tell you how much I've missed the eye rolls? I haven't. But anyway, so the passer rating that you love so much, went down in 2023. It didn't go up.
Yes, so again, he also played more games.
Passer rating is not a volume number.
I know it's not a volume, but I'm sorry. When you have more opportunities and you have more throws, more attempts, there's no guarantee. He was still a 100 rated quarterback. There are two quarterbacks.
That wasn't the point. I'm finding this notion that his career has done nothing but get better every year. I think he was better in 2022 before the injuries. And if we're limiting it only to, well, he was better in 2023 because he played all 17 games. Okay. But to me, he was a better quarterback in 2022 than in 2023.
We are splitting hairs on that, and that is not the topic we shall fight about today.
Okay.
He played all 17 games, and at the end of the season, he had very little weaponry to work with, but it is what it is. I expect him to improve moving forward as he continues to do. And this will be his third year in the exact same offense that he has with better weaponry. Probably not the same caliber of an offensive line, but tight ends, hello. Like Odell Beckham, if he can stay healthy, that's a clear upgrade.
There's that word over there. Yes. If he can stay healthy. Okay, let's move on to
let's move on. Let's start with the $28 million man. And when you look at the details of Christian Wilkins' contract, $28 million over the next 3 years, all of it guaranteed. Mm-hmm. Is that a price that you pay for Christian Wilkins?
No.
Okay.
Because he's a very, very good defensive tackle. He's not Chris Jones good. He's not Aaron Donald good. And
pretty much those are the only people I'm paying $28 million a year.
Well, he's not Dexter Lawrence good. I think Dexter Lawrence is a better player than him. I would tell you, even though I see you tweet and write about this all the time, and I mean, I cannot disagree with you more on this. I think Quinnen Williams is a better player than Christian Wilkins.
Yeah, not last year, but I do agree with you. He might be a better player, but I don't think he had a better statistical year than Christian last year.
It's not all about statistics, though.
I know it is not.
Okay.
Let's get into Calais Campbell. To me, is the seamless replacement there. The argument that I make all the time with Calais Campbell, and we just got the details of his contract. He signed a 1 year, $2 million deal, which to me is amazing for the Miami Dolphins. Congratulations. If I were Calais Campbell, I wouldn't get out of bed for $2 million. But more props to him that he wants to continue to play. The difference in age is 9 years. Calais is a fossil. He's a dinosaur. He's probably might be the oldest man in the NFL that's not a quarterback or a kicker. 6-time Pro Bowler, 105.5 career sacks, which makes him third in the NFL behind Von Miller and Cameron Jordan, or Jordan Cameron, whichever one is not the tight end. I can never remember.
Jordan Cameron's a tight end who played for the Dolphins.
Yes, Cameron Jordan. Those are the only two pass rushers that he is behind in terms of sack production. We're talking about a guy who has been to 6 Pro Bowls, been the 2010s All-Decade team. And based on the film last year, I would say he's pretty much on par, if not better suited for a 3-4 scheme than Christian Wilkins. But I have it as a slight downgrade. What would you say?
So you're trying to influence the jury here. What would you say? I have it as a slight downgrade. Here's the thing. If we're talking in a vacuum strictly for 2024, I'm not sure it's a slight downgrade, other than the fact that Christian Wilkins was on the field pretty much the entire season. I mean, he played like 85% of the defensive snaps, which is crazy.
And he's been a very durable player for all 5 years of his career.
No, correct. He has.
So is Calais Campbell, with the exception of, I believe, 1 year.
I believe you're correct. Is it an apples to apples? I think Campbell can line up in more different spots.
He can.
On the defensive line, and Wilkins can. I think in terms of the production last year, Wilkins' production was clearly, again, with the numbers, was clearly better. But again, Campbell can play anywhere on the defensive line. And he's going to give you production. Is he going to match what Wilkins did last year? Maybe, maybe not.
$26 million savings too.
Well, correct. If you factor in, but I don't think your exercise does not factor in contract, because otherwise it would be. And that was part of the reason where the Dolphins said, Christian Wilkins, we love you and you're very good, but you're not $28 million a year guaranteed good.
Yeah, we'd rather have the 3rd round pick for him, but yes.
Correct. So I would say microscopic downgrade.
Microscopic downgrade. I agree with you. I said that previously. Let's get into some of the other L's, or let me not influence the jury. Robert Hunt, 5-year, $100 million contract. We both love Rob. Rob is a great guy. I will cheer for him. That's probably the only reason I'll watch Carolina Panthers games. He's got $44 million coming to him over the next 2 years. And you know who the Dolphins decided that they want to replace him with? We
don't know. We don't know yet.
Oh, I know. This is, come on. When you draft somebody in the 2nd round and then trade next year's 3rd round pick to secure his rights, you're going to give this guy every single opportunity, because you use 2 very high resources on him. I think it's going to be Liam Eichenberg's job to lose. And if it's not Liam Eichenberg, it's going to be Jack Driscoll, who is going to be the backup at right guard and right tackle. Driscoll was signed for a 1-year deal for $1.8 million. So this is another massive savings by the Miami Dolphins. Do you look at that as upgrade, downgrade, status quo?
I mean, come on. Is that a trick question? I mean, yeah, I think that's a very significant downgrade. I said a few times last year, with you disagreeing with me all the time, because that's what you do, that I wasn't sure Robert Hunt wasn't the Dolphins' best offensive lineman.
Come on, Connor Williams was killing it last season.
Yeah, but again, he played like 9 games or something. I mean,
yeah, okay, all right. I mean,
here's the one thing, and I understand the idea of traditionally your guard is not as valuable as your tackle. However, when you're dealing with a shorter quarterback, what is it you don't want? What's the worst thing you want is you don't want pressure up the middle. So if ever there was an argument for paying a little bit more for an interior offensive lineman, it's when you have a quarterback who's 6'1", listed as 6'1", as opposed to having a 6'5" guy, where maybe then your offensive tackles are more significant. But having said all that, it's a massive downgrade. I don't think, even if Liam takes a big step forward, and we don't know.
Yeah.
Based on the evidence, doesn't look great. But again, and here's I'm sorry if I go off on a tangent here. If this is a guy that you're going to give every single solitary shot to win the right guard job, why did he start the offseason program at center, as he told us? Because Aaron Brewer was sidelined with an injury.
Yeah, because they didn't do an adequate enough job to sign a quality backup center.
I mean, or cross-train somebody else on the roster. Again, if the plan is Liam's our guy at right guard, and we need to make it work with him. So,
and that leads us, I'll move on to, I agree with you. And I think that was one of the bigger issues that I had about the roster, was the fact that Liam, you got to give this guy a legit shot to handle that right guard spot. And if he can't beat out Jack Driscoll, okay, then he's the swingman center guard, jack of all trades, do everything. He's the new backup center. But You put so much resources into Liam. Invested 38 starts into him. You gotta get this guy's got 38 starts under his resume at 5 different positions. You got to give him a chance to settle in and settle down and play that right guard spot. We both watched Liam.
Stop doing this with him.
That's true, but I don't disagree with you. But here's my thing about Liam, and I was critical of him majority of last season, just a tad bit. Christian Wilkins took his confidence like the Grinch, just absolutely just snatched it out of his soul. Then his ribs were broken. Then he comes back. He's playing center. He's shoved into the game as a center without any experience. Is a disaster against Buffalo. Takes ownership for that loss. Actually gets better. Connor Williams comes back, fills in at guard. Then it's, then Connor Williams gets hurt again, back at center. Then he gets his calf hurt, and he has to finish the final month of the season without practicing and playing in the games. Is that the greatest case study for like a fair evaluation of a player? Not to say that we should make excuses, because I would believe Robert Jones would raise his hand to take every single opportunity that Liam Eichenberg has got.
No. Yeah, but again, since you made the point of saying like stability helps.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned a certain quarterback playing in the same offensive system for 3 years in a row. Doesn't it help an offensive lineman to be able to hone in on one position as opposed to jumping from one spot to another all the time?
It does. No doubt about it. And I would definitely like to see that for Liam. I'm not guaranteeing you that you'll get the end results that you want. But then again, you saw what happened to Austin Jackson last season. A little bit of confidence. He started playing well, and his career kind of took off. Let's move on to the other offensive line position, Aaron Brewer for Connor Williams. And I know that there's been reports that Connor Williams is not retiring and is looking for work and is going to be ready for the start of the regular season. Do I believe any of that? Absolutely not. But where do you see it with the Connor Williams departure and Aaron Brewer, who signed for 3 years, $21 million, $13.2 million of it guaranteed?
It's kind of another one that's pretty obvious that it's a downgrade. Connor Williams was playing some really, really good ball when he was on the field last year. And can we say maybe even a top 5 center in the league last year when he was on the field?
I think top 10 offensive lineman in the NFL last year when he was healthy.
Whoa, regardless of position. Whoa.
He was a listen. I have respect for him the way that he was playing. You put up any one of those Raheem Mostert or Devon Achane highlights, and you're gonna see Connor Williams about 10 yards downfield mowing somebody down on some of the good highlights.
Yeah, but is that real to me? That to me, again, that speaks more to the design of the play where he's able to go down the field as opposed to I'd be more impressed with wiping somebody out at the line of scrimmage. But that's just me. I'm weird that way, along with a lot of other ways. But yes, we can agree Connor Williams clearly was playing some good ball. Aaron Brewer, as we both acknowledged in our previous post All Dolphins podcast appearances together here and on my podcast, looks on the smallish side for an offensive lineman. How about on the very smallish side for an offensive lineman? And how well he holds up in pass pro, still to be determined.
Yeah,
that's been a concern with him from his time in Tennessee. But again, no, there's no question that right now that appears like a downgrade.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. He's probably going to be one of the top players that I'll be watching for. I'm always obsessed with the trenches, but I'm anxiously waiting for when the pads come on to see how he performs. Now, here's a position I will give you: Jordan Brooks and Anthony Walker Jr. for Jerome Baker. You looking at that as what?
Well, that's a 2-for-1. So that's kind of right away. That's kind of not fair to Bake, because if I'm Bake, I say, well, you need 2 guys to replace me. So immediately. Question is, you speak to people in Seattle and you evaluate his body of work, and it's kind of like there's mixed reviews over there. And there's mixed reviews. In certain areas, he was very good. In other areas, like as a pass rusher, was very, very good. Against the run, and in coverage, yeah. And remember, this is a first-round pick that the Seahawks
decide not to give the fifth-year option to.
Correct. I think the reflex reaction was based on the athleticism we see there, that it was a clear upgrade over Baker just by himself. And now I've taken time to reevaluate my position, and I'm not sure. But if you're going to pile on Anthony Walker Jr., who's a very solid veteran starter, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah, but again, is it really fair, though, to do – excuse me, my duck is calling me. Is it really fair to go – it's an alarm on my phone. Is it really fair to go 2 for 1? If you go strictly Brooks for Baker, then
Seattle did sign Jerome Baker to replace Jordan Brooks. And I have no issue with Jerome Baker. I think Jerome Baker has been a solid, consistent, reliable player for the Miami Dolphins. Was he worth the contract that he was expected to receive this year? No, which is why they purged him. But I'm not going to sit there and say that. The one thing I'm curious is will Jordan Brooks be better against the run than Jerome Baker was? Because Jerome Baker was not the instinctive guy who could sniff it out. That wasn't his forte, and I don't think he was that strong in coverage as his career progressed. But he's one hell of an NFL player, and I think he's going to continue to be a good NFL player for probably the next 4 years. Let's hope that's the case. But I do that. It's funny that you say that, because I looked at every single player, the adds and the subtractions. There are 2 positions where there was clear-cut, massive upgrades, and it was a 2 for 1 because the Dolphins clearly felt like they needed another backup, or they felt like Anthony Walker at, I believe he's making $1.4 million, was too good of a deal to pass up. They were just like, let's just throw him on the pile.
Yep.
I agree. And I will admit, he was probably one of my top 5 guys standouts in OTAs and mini camps, because that guy made plays, a lot of plays. And Agreed. I know he was working a lot because, Brooks was be-paced and David Long wasn't working during mini camp. So you got a great opportunity to see Anthony Walker, but he made plays.
One final point, if I may, on Baker, it's another example for all of those out there who keep taking shots at Brian Flores as a head coach, and they're out there. Brian Flores got the max production out of the dude. Him and Emmanuel Akbar, the 2 guys who absolutely screamed to me that, he squeezed every bit of juice out of those 2 guys.
Remember when Brian Flores got here and they immediately kicked Kiko Alonso to the curb, mm-hmm. and it wasn't immediately. They gave it a couple weeks. And then Raekwon, they were like, Raekwon, we don't need you. Like, Jerome's our inside linebacker. And then Raekwon had to compete with who's the guy that didn't like me?
Oh man, where's the list? It's a long list. Hold on.
Yes, I know. But what's the inside linebacker? He plays for the Steelers now.
Oh, Landon Roberts.
Landon Roberts. There you go. Yes. Let's move on to one. This is probably the most controversial of all the takes that I have, and I'm not even going to tell you where I stand on this. But
I read your column, Omar. So, and guess what? Though I can formulate my own opinions and not be swayed by you, despite the joke I made about influencing the jury.
Kendall Fuller for Xavier Howard. Where do you sit on that?
Not in the same place you sit.
Okay, please share.
And here's the thing, and in your writing, and I'm not going to divulge everything you wrote at MiamiHerald.com, is you harped an awful lot on Xavier Howard's whole body of work. And if we talk, because
if somebody has entered the league at the exact same time as you and has played less games than you and has 13 more interceptions than you, who's better?
No, who's had a better career? Xavier Howard. Who's a better player now? Is it really Xavier Howard? Are we sure about that? And that's the thing. If we're talking prime Xavier Howard versus prime Kendall Fuller, yeah, we go X all day. I agree. But the last 2 years were seasons, and this is coming from a guy who defended X last year, where I said there were a couple of plays where he got beat for a touchdown. I think it might have been was it Buffalo, I think, one game where the quarterback held the ball for like 12 seconds and the guy ran 4 different ways in the back of the end zone and he gets beat for the touchdown. Then you have fans going, look, Howard gave up a touchdown. I mean,
yeah. And then they also bring up the play against Tennessee, which was
one? Hopkins over him?
Yeah, the Hopkins deep pass that they actually that the first time I've ever heard Mike McDaniels criticize a player in that team meeting. Remember that one where he brought up the film and showed it? It showed it to the whole team.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the mistake he made. I know he mistimed the jump was when he
was peeking in the backfield.
So there you go. He was trying to play hero ball. But no, I think at worst right now, based on X and the injury issues he had last year, the past couple of years, I should say, to me that's at worst it's a wash, if not a slight upgrade. And this is why. Sorry, this is why I wrote for si.com/NFL/Dolphins about the veteran additions and ranking them, and I had Fuller at or near the top of my list. And I check out the story, and you'll see exactly where I had him.
You got to tweet out that story because I hadn't seen that amongst the 6,000 things you write on a weekly basis. I will fight you on that. I will say this: Kendall Fuller, more scheme diverse. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we're going to be playing a lot of zone, Kendall Fuller is absolutely a better fit than X. That is not his game. But let me ask you this question. DeAndre Hopkins, fourth quarter, game on the line. Who would you rather have one-on-one coverage? And you need the ball back. You don't need to stop him. You need the ball back.
Yeah, except the problem is I understand the premise of your question, except it's a really, really, really narrow scope because you're talking about one aspect of playing cornerback. And under your premise, yes, I'm going to give you X, assuming he's not dealing with some sort of hamstring or groin injury.
Okay, that's fair. Then this leans on Kendall Fuller's durability, and he better be one hell of a durable player. Because if he's, I mean, we're talking 13 fewer interceptions, bro.
I understand that.
13. Only one player in the NFL. Only one player in the NFL has more interceptions than that's Justin Simmons than X.
And he's a safety, which is not the same thing. But here's the thing: is Byron Jones, when he got to the Dolphins and his first couple of years, was a good cornerback. He didn't get you picks, but he was a good cornerback. Wow. No respect. No respect.
I thought Byron Jones. Anyway, you saw Devontae Parker embarrass Byron Jones all training camp. Nearly took that guy's confidence away.
Not talking about training camp. I'm talking about during the regular season.
He was okay because he was always covering the second receiver. He never got to the first.
He did a good job for the Dolphins. And if he sucked as bad as you're trying to suggest he sucked,
he was okay.
Can I finish my statement?
Yes.
The Dolphins would not have been able to be as blitz crazy as they were because they would have been exposed on the back end. And part of the reason that they couldn't is that Byron Jones was okay. And there were a lot of times he got beat because, again, it was always single cover.
They were naked.
Yeah,
they were naked. They were naked out there. You got to have good cornerbacks to be able to play that scheme, and so I'll upgrade from okay to he was good. I will.
And he looked bad because X on the other side during those seasons was like a top 3 corner in the league.
Yeah. Let's get into another position. Jonnu Smith, Jody Fortson for Tyler Kroft, and most Dolphin fans will say, Who is Tyler Kroft?
Do we really even need to go over this one?
I mean, and what I find interesting is they still have Durham Smythe, they still have Julian Hill, who are, every time you talk to a coach about Julian Hill, they absolutely love him. Mm-hmm. So I was surprised at how much they added to that position. Jonnu signed 2 years, $4.8 million deal. Leader in the NFL in yards after the catch for all tight ends, 21 touchdowns during his career. Do you think he leapfrogs Durham Smythe as a starter at that position?
No.
Okay.
He will join him in the starting lineup when they go 2 tight ends at times, which they will do. But if they use 1 tight end, no, I think they prefer Durham Smythe because of the blocking element and
third downs, a 1 tight end package. You put.
Well, then that's Jonnu Smith, obviously.
Okay, all right.
unless it's third and short, then maybe you have two tight ends, and if you only have one, it's going to be Durham Smythe.
What I find very interesting is John Embry and Mike McDaniel pointed out the physicality that Jonnu Smith brings and the toughness that he brings. John Embry basically said, who's a tight ends coach, basically said, no toughness, no physicality, no work in the run game, no blocking at the line of scrimmage. You basically can't play for me, which is kind of why we saw Mike Gesicki get the boot out of here.
What are you saying about Mike Gesicki? Sorry.
Huh?
What are you suggesting about Mike Gesicki?
What I've been saying his entire career. He's probably the softest NFL player I've ever met. So to me, we might be looking at a 50-50 snap count here. And I know they have a ton of respect for Durham Smythe. However, it was very clear, and this coaching staff made it very clear, that they looked at improving their tight end position as the number one way that they can improve their offense. And they did it by adding Jonnu Smith. I believe it was the first move that they made the entire offseason.
Well, technically it wasn't. The very first move, I believe, was Davian Nixon, the defensive tackle who recently got cut.
I mean, of guys who are not signing futures contracts. But yes, you get
Davian Nixon wasn't a future contract. He was signed like in March, the week before the start of free agency.
He ain't getting no guaranteed money. Okay, let me correct that.
Okay, I get your point, though. And the first of note.
The first of note, yes.
Yes, because he signed before the free agent market because he was not a quote-unquote unrestricted free agent. But yeah, no, there definitely could be, and the Dolphins would be crazy not to make full use of those guys. To me, the only question of tight end is, and like, again, I get the feeling, but at the end of the year, if they both stay healthy, Durham Smythe's going to have more starts than Jonnu Smith. Snap count's probably going to be very close.
Yeah.
Question is, do they keep 4 tight ends on the active roster? And you didn't even mention Tanner Connor, who once upon a time was a guy the Dolphins like, whoa, there's something there.
Yeah, and I think once they met Julian Hill, they were like, oh, okay, Tanner who? That obsession disappeared very quickly. And props to you, because you were the first guy that actually noticed that Julian Hill was making more plays than the drafted guy I don't even remember what his name was. And
Liza Higgins.
Yeah, there you go. And the kid made the 53-man roster. Didn't just make the 53-man roster. He might have been one of the top rookie contributors last year. It was him and Achane.
Yes. It's kind of a low bar. And then Tyler Kroft, who was a guy who had a lot of experience coming to the Dolphins, was basically persona non grata the whole season.
Yeah. Just kept for emergency situations.
Yep.
Let's get into the defense, the nose tackle position. And for what most people don't understand is that nose tackle is a very specific position. Your job is to take on 2 blockers and basically not get moved. I'm not saying that the Dolphins had the best nose tackle in Raekwon Davis, but he was a player that the Indianapolis Colts decided, hey, we like you enough. We're going to give you 2 years for $14 million. That's $7 million a year. And you know how the Dolphins replaced him? They signed 2 guys for $1.8 million each, in Tier Tart and Benito Jones. Now, both have been starters. Benito started for the Lions. Tier Tart has been a starter for Tennessee. Mm-hmm. The production is kind of equivalent, whether you go Raekwon Davis or Tart. Both are about the 25, 26 sack, 25 tackles, 28 tackles, 26 tackles, and 1 sack guy. This is a position that they're basically going to get about 500 snaps out of them. Do you look at that as an upgrade, downgrade, status quo?
If you look at Tart's production, I think it was TFL per snaps, that percentage was really, really high if you compare it to other defensive linemen. And I don't think Raekwon was necessarily much of an impact player. Now, Tart had, when he left Tennessee, and of course you can spin it however you want, whether it's a team justify. And I know this is
the guy basically admitted he forced his way out of there.
Well, correct. Well, that's not a good look if you're going to start kind of slacking up because you want to get done.
And it's not great that he was not in shape for the offseason program. And yeah, I said it.
Neither was Benito Jones. They did the guys. If you look at the term "body beautiful," you're not going to see either of those guys' pictures.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to have some sort of understanding where you are in your career and the fact that you have a lot to prove. You got to get yourself in some great shape within this next 5-week period. And that's the one thing you got to respect about Raekwon Davis. Remember Raekwon after practice, he'd be riding a bike. And by the time the season ended, Raekwon looked like a basketball player more than he looked like a football player.
At 6'7", 315, whatever he was. No, he worked on his body big time. But again, the production wasn't totally there. No. So to me, my verdict would be optimistically a slight upgrade.
Oh, okay. All right.
How about that?
It's a 2-for-1. It is a 2-for-1. But here's the thing.
I think Tard to Raekwon is optimistically a slight upgrade.
If Tart's in shape, but I could hear where you're coming from that standpoint. Let's get to one that I think will be a little bit interesting. Shaq Barrett for Andrew Van Ginkel. What surprised me a little bit is that there wasn't that much of an age difference between the two. I think Andrew Van Ginkel and his community college and multiple years at Wisconsin. Andrew Van Ginkel is 28. Shaq Barrett is 31.
That's 3 years in NFL life. That's a pretty big difference.
It is a pretty big difference, and the reason Shaq Barrett's here is because of the the Tampa Bay Buccaneers basically said, "All right, old man, we've had enough. Now we'll allow you to move on." The Dolphins signed him to a 1-year deal worth $7 million, whereas Andrew Van Ginkel got a 2-year deal for $20 million. The way I look at this is Barrett's productivity. If you're going to The one thing I liked about Andrew Van Ginkel was he was a very versatile player. You could play him at inside linebacker. You could play him at outside linebacker. You could play him at kind of defensive end. He's scheme diverse. Shaq Barrett, I don't know if he's that, but he has produced 59 sacks in his 131 games.
Except he has 2 seasons in double digits and mediocre production in the other seasons. And the last couple of years have not been there. Of course, he had an Achilles injury a couple of years ago that obviously you have to return from. That's always an issue. I think you know me well enough to know I'm a big Van Ginkel guy. I think he's very, very valuable as that third edge defender behind Chubb and Phillips. And based on Barrett's production last year in Tampa Bay, which was better than strictly the sack numbers because there were some pressures. But Van Ginkel, to me, you felt him most of the time he was on the field. So
but what I really like about Van Ginkel is, and I think we could have some sort of Wes Welker effect. You know how the Dolphins thought Wes Welker was just good till he got to New England, and then he was great. Van Ginkel, he had really mastered that pass rush. And he had varying moves, and he unleashed them on offensive linemen, and it led to the productivity that he had last season. 69 tackles, 6 sacks with interception. And we know Van Ginkel had always been a very productive player. He was scrappy. He's always around the ball. So I think that they might lose some of that, but I think the addition of Anthony Walker allows them to kind of use a player because I think
they stick Walker on the edge, though.
I think what Andrew Van Ginkel was doing was he was starting at inside linebacker and then going out to the edge and creating kind of, forcing teams into tough decisions. And I think that the Dolphins defense, I don't think it's going to be Anthony Walker, but I think it might be Jordan Brooks who does that. And then Anthony Walker serves as the inside linebacker. So I think if I'm going to guess why they added Anthony Walker, outside of the fact he's really cheap, it's because they want to put him into that role so they can put Jordan Brooks to the elephant role, which is the guy that hovers around and you have no idea what the heck he's going to be doing. Or that could be Chop Robinson, to be honest with you.
But okay. So my verdict is a slight downgrade, slight or clear downgrade. Van Ginkel, of course, now playing for the Minnesota Vikings under Brian Flores, who will know how to maximize what he can do. My only concern, and this has got nothing to do with the Dolphins, though, but Van Ginkel didn't take part in any of the offseason work with the Vikings as a result of that foot injury he had. So is that going to be a factor at the start of the season?
Definitely. Another interesting position, Jordan Poyer for Deshaun Elliott. Elliott was a strong safety, and even though Jordan Poyer has played strong safety majority of his career, he's been far more productive. However, there is a little bit of concern for me 33 years old. Does he still have that speed and range to cover defenders one-on-one? Now, Elliott didn't either, but where do you stand on that?
Yeah.
Over there?
Sorry?
So what are you moving over there?
No, somebody's moving some chairs. Yeah, and we examined Poor quite a bit, and the reality is at his peak, he was one of the better safeties in the league. He's not at his peak anymore.
We are far past our peak.
You what?
We are far past
yes,
our peak.
We are past the peak. And then last year was not necessarily a great season for him. He brings intangibles up the wazoo.
Yes.
With the leadership, with the dogness that he has. But is he going to be a liability in coverage if he's asked? And is that part of the reason the Dolphins double down on veteran safeties by bringing in Marcus May? Deshaun Elliott, who I know you didn't like in coverage, and the metrics I think are pretty bad, did bring a little bit of a thumping quality to the secondary, which they don't really have. I mean, Poyer will hit, but he's not a thumper like Elliott.
And neither is Javon Holland.
Correct. Why is it, by the way, why is it not a one for two? Are we addressing Marcus May and Brandon Jones separately here?
Marcus May and Brandon Jones separately. Or we could throw it in here. We could throw it on the pile right now. Marcus May and Brandon Jones. May has been a player with a franchise tag. He has been an upper echelon safety in this league. He started all 77 games in his career. Problem is injury history. That's why the Dolphins got him for basically a $2 million deal. Whereas Brandon Jones sold his youth and athleticism into the Denver Broncos for 3 years, $20 million, $11 million of which was guaranteed. And I looked at that deal like, wow, Sean.
Good for you, Brandon.
Yeah, good for you, dude. And I think that has a lot to do with the agency that you're represented by. I know people will say, well, what are you talking about? And I'm saying, I'm talking about insider stuff. Somebody got a real good deal.
Okay. Well, yeah, kudos to the agent.
Yeah.
And this is no shade on Brandon. Well, it kind of is, but sorry. If we're gonna package them, so it's May and Poyer versus Elliott and Jones. You got definitely older. You lost some physicality because Brandon Jones also is a thumper. Except
Brandon Jones was a hitter too. Yeah.
Well, sometimes last year he was kind of hitting his teammates, which kind of doesn't help. Let's ask Jerome Baker how that worked out. Even X, he like planted a helmet in X's hip in one game. So I don't know about that one. And again, you can't go, because if you go by credentials, it's a massive upgrade.
Yeah, no question.
Except again, we're for 2024. Is it a massive upgrade?
I don't know. I definitely like the Marcus May signing. I'm curious to see what he can do when he's on the field. It was a shoulder injury that took him out last season. Obviously, I'm not going to ask him to be in the box. He's in my mind a free safety. I'm moving Javon and Poyer are the guys that are in the box. Hopefully he can cover. The fact that you added one guy who's got range and coverage ability to me is an upgrade, because then that frees up Javon Holland to do other things, whereas you could not do the reverse with Elliott or Brandon Jones. I hate to say it, but neither were strong from a coverage standpoint, and that limits what you do defensively.
Correct, but you could have stuck Elliott close to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Slight upgrade maybe, but that's the best I can do.
Gotcha. Let's go to Odell Beckham for Cedric Wilson Jr.
Are we really do we really need to?
I mean, let's be thorough here.
Thorough. Should not be a long conversation here.
Cedric Wilson took the most snaps out of all the receivers not named Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and that was a little surprising to me. But I wrote in my piece that Cedric Wilson is the worst Chris Greer free agency signing in his tenure as GM. You argue that? I know you will.
I'd have to look at can I look at the media guide real quick?
Go ahead. Go for it.
Dan Feeney.
You traded him and got a resource for it.
Right, let me look at my media guide here real quick.
And Dan Feeney was a $3 million deal. Come on, man.
Okay.
Like Cedric Wilson, you signed him to like I believe it was 21 million, 3-year,
Over 3
$21
years,
million.
But important to point out, as I've done before, and I need to do again, as we go with the head flying backward. That signing was made before the Dolphins got a phone call. Hey, you interested in trading for Tyreek Hill?
Even if they hadn't traded for Tyreek Hill, he wasn't going to help. He was not good.
He might have had a better shot, and we also know the Dolphins never would have signed him had they had an inkling they could get Tyreek Hill. We agree on that?
Yeah, we probably do agree on that. But you signed him thinking that he was a replacement for Devontae Parker. He couldn't even hold Devontae Parker's jockstrap.
Wow.
And we're not even talking about we're not even talking about a good receiver. Like I just and I hate to be a Cedric Wilson hater, but it just made no sense. Go ahead. You got one?
Will Fuller the fourth.
Oh wow. Well, I don't know if that's fair because that guy quit football. Did he really try?
Yeah, after well, that was part of the kind of wasn't that kind of part of the issue with him, how much he actually liked football? Even before he got to Miami. Shaq Lawson, I'll give you another one, Shaq Lawson, who they gave way too much money and wasn't necessarily a great scheme fit.
Okay, Shaq. Cedric Wilson. I mean, you at least move Shaq Lawson. You trade, Will Fuller. Yeah, I give you Will Fuller, even though that's not necessarily Chris Greer's fault. But it's on there. I shall account for it.
Okay, fair enough. And can we agree that as much as you like to dump on the dude, he actually performed pretty well.
He was okay.
Not a great wide receiver, but he performed actually pretty well last year.
Yeah, and then you looked at your roster, and you said, we clearly need a reliable, consistent third receiver because everybody's going to get single covered, and they just got to beat one man. And that's why they signed Odell Beckham Jr. And let's throw this on the pile here. They upgraded from, or actually I called it a youth movement. Malik Washington and Taj Washington replaced Chase Claypool and Robbie Chosen. Considering Claypool signed a minimum salary, no guaranteed money with Buffalo, which means he's just barely hanging on to the NFL. Let's hope he can learn the offense and not round out routes. And then Robbie Chosen, who, pour out a little liquor for Robbie. It didn't go well here in Miami. He bounced on and off the practice squad. But do you even think Malik Washington and Taj Washington beat out River Craycraft, Eric Uzukama, and Anthony Schwartz?
I don't think Anthony Schwartz, yes. But the other two, you forgot Braxton Berrios also.
I count him. He's safe.
Whoa. So you have Hill, Waddle, Beckham, and Berrios as safe. And then the last two spots among Uzukama, Craycraft, Taj Washington, Malik Washington. I don't think it's absolutely do not think it's a lock that either of the draft picks or that both of the draft picks make the 53. I think one of them will do. I don't.
And then one of them stashed. One of them's waived and stashed.
Correct. And I wish I could say, and again, it was only mini camper in the offseason program, whatever. I wish I could say I was blown away or I was like, I really noticed something.
Which one was working? I can never remember which one was working.
It was Malik.
It was Malik. Okay. So I suppose we got.
I mean, I didn't see anything. I mean, he wasn't noticeable to me, either really good or really bad.
Let's not sleep on Braylon Sanders too. There's a reason he's been on the practice squad for the last 2 years, and he knows the offense. I actually like Braylon Sanders. I think
Except I'm going to point out that one thing that you do notice are like drop passes. Even though again it's a June practice or a May practice, who cares? Except if you're a young guy trying to make the team and with a long uphill climb, you can't afford to drop passes. And Braylon Sanders dropped one in back-to-back days.
You know who I like? I like Matthew Sexton, and then he got cut. I was like, whoa! I thought he did well in camp, and then he just got whacked for Calais Campbell. So it's tough out there for these NFL wide receivers trying to make the Dolphins roster. I think the one thing that we've learned is that understanding of the offense always benefits a guy, which is why River Craycraft probably continues to have the edge, in my opinion, and the fact that he does absolutely every single thing. Remember, River Craycraft was number 1 in Tyreek Hill's wide receiver draft.
And also remember, he was with McDaniel in San Francisco, and McDaniel made it a point to bring him here when River Craycraft was out of work. So there's something there, without question.
Definitely. And let's get into the final one, because I think some of these are relatively easy to address. Seren Neal for Justin Bethel. That's a special teams. You're just going with a younger special teams player. We got pass rusher Chop Robinson and Mohamed Kamara replace Emmanuel Agba and Melvin Ingram. To me, that's just a youth movement. Let's hope one, if not both of those guys, are productive NFL players, if not sack monsters. And Jalen Wright replaces Darrington Evans. Jalen Wright was the 3rd round pick for the Miami Dolphins. They actually traded a 4th round pick next year. They actually traded a 3rd round pick next year to move into the 4th round to select the University of Tennessee running back who's got the 4.38 speed that Mike McDaniel likes. And then we get to Cam Smith is replacing Eli Apple. How do you see that playing out?
Is he though?
Ooh.
No, well, I mean, is it as simple as we're not re-signing Eli Apple because we have Cam Smith ready to step into that spot? I think that they're doing wait and see with Cam Smith and like, okay, let's see what he's going to show us in training camp. And I'm going to guess it's going to be more what Cam Smith shows the Dolphins coaching staff outside the football field as on the football field, because you and I have discussed this many times, and we both agree based on what we saw in training camp in the preseason, that dude definitely should have gotten snaps. And then we have Sam Madison telling us he needs to be better in the details, such as showing up on time and staying late, which I mean, might as well take a bullhorn and saying the dude's not being professional enough. So to me, I think that's going to be the bigger issue, because I think we've seen enough plays where there's something there. There's clearly something there. There's enough.
I can't sit there and say that. I want to see him in train, because you know what I didn't see during the training camp work that we watched? I didn't see him working versus Tyreek Hill and not much against Jalen Waddle. And until I see you do that, I can't vouch for you. And I really need to see him and working against Tua Tagovailoa. Like we were watching him with Mike White and Skylar Thompson. Like it's no disrespect.
Well, yeah, I think there's a little bit of disrespect here. No, a lot of disrespect here. But I'm gonna keep what I don't recall. I'm gonna be honest with you, whether I saw him against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I saw him against Jalen Waddle in 7-on-7, and he got smoked by Jalen Waddle on a deep pass in a 7-on-7, and some people are going nuts. Oh my God, he sucks.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing we will say, he's not Noah Igbenogany. Let's put that out there. He wasn't Noah Igbenogany. Like at no point will I say he's Noah Igbenogany, and that I like Noah. He just it just wasn't.
Let me go back real quick. You like Noah? Yeah. Very.
I like Noah the man.
Yes, he's a very nice
player. Not so much.
And you know what? I don't think he's signed with any team.
Yeah, I just thought about that myself. I wonder if he signed with anybody.
I think he has. His contract was up, and the Cowboys didn't re-sign him. I don't think he signed. To me, again, it's not a Cam Smith versus Eli Apple. Is Cam Smith ready? And if Cam Smith's not ready, then maybe the Dolphins look for a veteran to add to Fuller, Ramsey, Ethan Bonner, and then also Nick Needham, because now with the acquisition of Marcus May, I think maybe that experiment might be over.
Yeah, I think the cornerback unit is probably the one unit that I would say it does not have the depth that would make me feel comfortable going into the regular season. Mm-hmm. But we got time, and then there are Eli Apples out there just waiting for work. So hell, there's Xavier Howard out there waiting for work.
There's an apple waiting to be picked.
On that note, folks, you've been watching Dolphins in Depth. This is Alan Poupard, who please tell them where they can find your work, Poupard.
I have to promote myself. You're not going to promote me. Fine.
Hold on. What month are we going to actually have a name for this?
Hopefully next month. For now, you can find my work on the SI Fan Nation Network Dolphins site at si.com/NFL/Dolphins. And my Twitter handle is my last name. Unfortunately, for some reason, it doesn't show up on here. It's at Poupart, Poupart NFL. and catch me on the All Dolphins podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts.
Well, thank you for your time, Alan, and look forward to enjoy your European trip. Enjoy seeing the world. I will continue to produce content here in your absence.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you for watching. We will be back next week for another episode of Dolphins in Depth.